If this works, it's because I'm trying to get past the 11-second mark where Facebook keeps booting me off. Let's see. I made it to 13 seconds, which means that this might be a go. If I can make it to 30 seconds, I know this is going to work. I've had to reboot and everything else. Fingers crossed. I'm at the 30-second mark, which means that this thing might be stable now. Yay! So since it seems to be working, I'm going to go ahead and share this live to my groups and give Facebook a moment to build my audience and for you guys to see that this is indeed working and for it to go on. I'm so happy. You guys just don't know how this has been like super glitchy, and this happens every single time when I try to go live from my desktop, but I'm going to persevere and hope that this works. All right, so that's shared there. Should I share this to my page? Yeah, I'll share it to my page. Why not? And give y'all a chance to get started. And I see I have my first viewer. So first viewer, I'm just sitting here rambling because I was giving it a moment to see if it indeed was going to be stable. I've been having some glitches and it looks like I'm staying connected. So if you are here in TV land or in Facebook land, can you let me know if my volume is working? And if not, I'm just going to keep talking as if it is, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So, for those of you guys that don't know me, or this is your first Facebook Live with me, my name is Aaliyah Mims, and I used to introduce myself as an educational leadership consultant, but that is in flux. If you've been following me on either this page or my personal page or my group Soul Tribe for Leaders, you know that I've been talking a lot about transition, showing up, and truly walking into my purpose. So what this is going to mean is that you're going to be getting some different content from me. And what has been beautiful about this journey is that I realized that all roads lead to this moment. So nothing that I've done to this point has been in vain or has been just something that's been flighty, but really each of these different steps has been preparing me for where I am now. So, so if you guys see me looking down, two things are happening. One, I have my phone here, so I'm making sure that it's actually staying stable. And then my kiddo just went to bed, and I have two dogs running around here, so I'm trying to figure out, make sure that they're not doing anything crazy. So first of all, that was a little bit about me, and I'm going to talk tonight about my spiritual journey. I call this my religious journal. That's a typo. It should be journey, but hey, we just gonna roll with it and perfect. And I wanted to talk about this because for the precise reason that, hey Desiree, I wanted to talk about this tonight, not just to talk about myself, but really to kind of illustrate this place of reflection that I'm in and illustrate how we go through different things in life and everything sometimes seems really disjointed, or it seems like, we're not sure how all of the pieces point together. And sometimes we even get frustrated, especially my millennials gets frustrated because we think that we're supposed to be at a certain place in life. But in reality, all of these different steps on this journey is really pointing towards your true calling and your true purpose and your true mission. And so what I've been able to realize as I've been through this moment of reflection and introspection this summer is that each of the different things that I've been going through really has been a means to get to an end, to get to how I'm supposed to show up in life and get to how am I supposed to serve in life, and that nothing has been in vain, even though most of us are uncomfortable with the journey. Most of us are uncomfortable with change. Most of us are uncomfortable with things being disrupted and for the reality that we've been living to not be as we thought it once was. So I'm going to tell you guys the story of Aaliyah and kind of what it looked like for me. So growing up, and this is more of a conversation, so I welcome participation, I welcome questions, I welcome this to be a true dialogue. This is not a lesson per se. So growing up, I grew up in not a traditionally black church. I grew up in what was called the CME Church, or the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And for those of you guys that aren't extremely familiar with religion, basically Episcopalians, if I'm getting this right, were the American version of the Anglican Church. Um, and then in the South, we had what was called the Colored Methodist Episcopal. Hey, Tasha. Which was different than, and then later on over generations, it was called the Christian Methodist Episcopal. And basically, it was very organized because it derived from Anglicanism. Am I saying that right? Which we all know is an offshoot of Catholicism. It was very based on tradition. It was based on order. We had a certain order of program that happened every Sunday. There was an organization, a governmenting body. Hey, Tasha, can you guys hear me okay? Making sure because my volume is working. And it was really based on a very structured governing body. Our leaders were elected every so often, et cetera, et cetera. And part of what was so special to me growing up in the CME church, especially in the small community that I grew up in, was that I realized that order was really important to me. My family was never a family that went to church every single Sunday, but we were highly spiritual in the sense of we say grace every meal. We celebrated every major holiday, major religious holiday. We were involved in church big district events. I was the princess of my district when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was voted on a convention to represent my district. And at the same time, however, I was going to a Catholic school, and a lot of African Americans went to Catholic schools back in the day, especially because it was considered like the best education that you can get. But a little known fact was that my mom actually converted to Catholicism when she was a child because she had gone to Catholic school as well. And so why do I bring that up? When I was probably one of the few kids that when I went to school, I actually really liked church. I loved the order of it. If I got to school early, I would go to mass. And even though I couldn't receive communion because I wasn't baptized in the Catholic faith, there was something that really, really resonated with me about it, to the point that even when I went away to college, I always celebrated Lent, or I'm sorry to say celebrate, I always upheld Lent, or observed Lent. I always got my ashes on Ash Wednesday. I always went to Mass on Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday, et cetera, et cetera. It was so much a part of who and what I was, not just because of the history and my upbringing, because I really felt this connection to ritual as a part of my faith. And that's what I realized as I flash forward and realized that ritual has always been important to me, whether it's through Catholicism, whether it was through growing up in the CME faith, whether it was even when I had a stint and I was baptized and born again under the Baptist faith. The ritual was always super, super important for me. And not just the ritual for myself and the individual part of it, but also doing ritual as part of the community was very important to me as well. So that's one of the things that I can now look back and draw out and see that was such a huge thing for me. And so for those of you guys that are just joining now, I'm not going to talk about my religious journey, and should say journey, in a linear fashion, but really around kind of as I look back and I realize that each of these different experiences that I've gone through and different talents and different skills that I've developed have all been winks and nudges to my true calling and true purpose. I realized that my religious journey has also been a huge part of that as well. So another thing that was very interesting, and I remember this as early as, as early as 8, 9 years old, that the sense and desire to belong to a community has always been huge. I remember being in church, in my church that I grew up in, Menlo Park CME. If anybody's here, shouting it out. And I'll call everybody from Menlo Park CME my cousins, because we were a very small congregation, less than 200. And on any given Sunday, it was always 50 of us. If that, we knew each other, we grew up together, we were at church on, for choir rehearsal, we were all in the same organizations, we were all in the same community. And at the same time, I remember feeling like I was always on the outside. I remember looking back and wishing I could be on the in crowd, even though there truly wasn't a clique, but I just remember feeling this desire to belong and not quite feeling like I did. And I can't pinpoint what that feeling was, but I do remember as I joined a church when I was 13 years old, another church. And as I saw my friends participating in a very popular Baptist church in my city as well, that desire to belong and wanting to be part of the crew was there. I think part of that was me maybe grappling with my sexuality, which I wasn't aware of until I was about 13, no, until I was about 14, almost 15. But I remember that deep desire of that deep desire about wanting to be in community with people and wanting to fellowship with people. And also not just that desire to fellowship and be in community with people, but and not just for the social part of it, but wanting to have a place in space to dialogue about God, not in the official Sunday school lessons that we have, because that's also part about being in the CME. You had the little book that you went through, and we had the same lessons, and it was very orderly, but wanting to really talk about ourselves and how do we fit into this, and what is God really saying to us, and how do we make sense of the world, and all the questions and the things that didn't seem to be tied up neatly at the end of a Sunday school lesson. And while I saw these group of girls in particular that I thought were kind of like the cool girls, I wanted to be a part of them, but they kind of weren't doing the same things that I was looking for. And I remember when I was around 12, 13, I started going to, I don't even remember, I have to do some, I don't want to bore you guys with the detail of me trying to figure this out, but I do remember that my family started going to a Baptist church briefly. And I was that kid that was, most 13-year-olds are trying to sit in the back pew and look at all the boys and all of this other stuff. And of course, I didn't realize then why I was not interested in looking at the boys. But I remember that I would be the one up, like waking up my family saying, y'all, it's time for church. Let's go. And when I got there, I had my notebook out. I was taking notes. I was researching everything that the pastor said. And not because I was one of these people that were like, anything the pastor said was right, but because I was truly interested in knowing for myself. And I was really interested in my own spiritual journey as early as 13. And when the call to join church, and I didn't quite know what it meant to join church. I didn't know that meant being baptized and the whole born again thing. I didn't know what it meant until I was behind the curtain that they take you to after you join or after you raise your hand for the altar call. And then they start planning out, when are you going to go to get your baptism? And I remember thinking like, oh shit, I didn't think that was what I was doing, but hey, why not? So I was, baptized again, and the whole with the pool and dunked and everything, which is very different from CME. Again, CME, we're very I don't want to say prim and proper, but I think that's what it is. Like, we don't do too much hooping and hollering, and our baptism happens with, sprinkle of water on the forehead. So this whole like being immersed in water was very different for me. But I did it, and it was interesting because I wasn't coerced by my family at all. They were more like, I was the outlier, and I was the one that was very much about, this is about right and wrong. And at that time, when I look back, I realized that my whole being stuck on right and wrong was really me trying to make sense of the world, me trying to establish order, because I had such disorder and chaos at home in my family life for all other kinds of reasons that I've talked about on other videos. But so being religious at that time, and I was religious at that time, like, the Bible said, I stopped eating seafood. I was holding on to a lot of the Leviticus dietary restrictions. So it's very similar to, kosher rules. I was doing all of that because I truly believed, and again, I was also reading the Bible, and of course, that's as far as I had gotten in the Bible, that this was my path to salvation. And if anything, I wanted to do it right. So I did wear pants because I don't think that was an issue for me, but I was really serious about doing it right. And I remember when I went back to school that fall, and so I was in high school, but I went to an all-girls school, so it was grades 7 through 12. So you just move from lower school to upper school to go to high school. Is anybody here? Am I talking to myself? Is this interesting at all? I feel like I'm just kind of like rambling on and on and on, but I can see that I have live viewers, so I'm not sure if this is even resonating, or if y'all are here, you just turned on your phones or whatever. But anyway, I'm just going to keep going. And feel free to jump in and ask me questions or whatever else. Or let me know if is this at all similar to how you were raised. So when I went to high school, I was that kid that had in my locker all of these posters about try God and Jesus is right, and like a lot of really conservative. Thank you, Tasha, for letting me know. A lot of conservative um, messaging in my locker because I was really committed to. To being a good Christian, and I was really committed to trying to be a positive influence on my friends. And so even though I was not out trying to tell people you need to go to church with me and you need to do XYZ and the Bible says, I really wanted to lead by example and show up as a good Christian because I really thought that that was salvation for me. And clearly at that age, not only was I looking for order in my life, I was also looking for kind of a way out, like a meaning in all of this. What does all of this mean? What's my role in this? Who am I beyond just this one singular person in this huge universe? So the funny thing, because God is funny like that, y'all. In case you didn't know, God is funny. You might think you have it all figured out, and that's gonna last for like 2.3 seconds. Because what also happened to me at the same time, so here I am, a freshman in high school, and I'm, semi almost Jesus freak. Not quite, but almost there. And what happened was, I'm going to give you guys this like a 90s movie. Like, I need you guys to picture this like it's like a 90s movie. I need you to see me standing in the locker room. I need you to see me with, a wind machine going past my hair and the whole nine, because this is how this scene looks in my brain. So what happened was, standing in the locker room, and this girl walked in, and she was looking for me for something. So whoever just joined me, I need y'all to set up the scene. I need, you got to have the whole wind machine, 90s. You need to have a 90s teen angst song going on in the background, because this is how this whole situation really was. Here I am, little Aaliyah. Actually, I was the same size as I am now, standing in the locker room, and this girl comes in the locker room looking for me for something else. And she's like, "Hey, are you Aaliyah?" And I'm like, "That's what I've been told." When I tell you it was like instant butterflies, heart gushing, falling in love, I swear if there could have been a heart emoji going over my head, it would have, because it was that just like that monumental for me. And I realized at this moment, like, oh my God, she is beautiful. Oh my God, I'm in love. And then, holy shit, this is not supposed to be happening. This is not supposed to be happening. This is wrong. Like, just a whole clusterfuck of everything happened in my head all at the same time. And because I was a good Christian girl, what did I do? I fasted and I prayed and I tried to bargain with God, and I tried to get a gazillion boyfriends, even though I couldn't seem to make myself go beyond first base. What's first base, y'all? Is first base kissing? I'm going to close my office door for a second while y'all come back and tell me what's first base nowadays or then. I have no idea what it was, but whatever it was, I wasn't getting that far because I still was like terrified of doing anything sexual. I did not want to get pregnant, and also the Bible says, even though I can't really quite seem to find it in the Bible, that's a whole nother story for another time, that, I'm saving myself. Kissing and a hug, yeah, okay, Tasha, that's as far as I got with these boys, but it was a bunch of them, and I was determined to try to make myself like boys, because I really believed at that time what the Bible said, or what I thought the Bible said, or how the Bible was interpreted to say that that homosexuality was an abomination, and I did not want to be an abomination. And so I figured I had two options. I can either A, like boys, and pray the gay away and do everything in my power to be straight, or B, I can end my life. And I thought those are my two options. I didn't necessarily want to do option B, but I didn't want to be something that God would be ashamed of. And I didn't want to disappoint God. And I didn't want to disappoint my family. And I didn't want to be this stain on society. So that's where I was at 14. And I tried really hard to like boys. Like I tried really, really hard. And I also, what's kind of the beauty in this that I didn't know then, but I know now, was that I was establishing an opportunity to get to know God in my own way outside of what a book was saying. So what I did know was, again, back to ritual. What I did know was that prayer works. What I did know was that God spoke to me. What I did know was that meditation and fasting were really important parts of my spiritual journey. And so I went to those things and I did it earnestly. Like I didn't necessarily, I was never a boisterous person. So for example, when Easter came around, my mom had no idea that I was fasting. She had no idea what I'd given up for Lent. Like this was just part of my journey. And so I wanted to wait and see what God said to me. So my whole 10th grade year in high school, I just got really busy. I still didn't have an answer yet, but I was still working on the answer. And I knew that I couldn't do option A because it was not happening, y'all. To me, kissing boys was the same as kissing my arm. Like it was nothing, the remotely exciting, tingly, whatever it was, none of that was happening. I remember all my friends talking about, oh yeah, he's so cute, and I'd be faking along like, yeah, girl, yes he is, and they'd be talking about whatever, and I felt like what I've read about how autistic people experience life, how they sometimes try to learn and mimic other people's behaviors because they don't quite know how to follow the social cues naturally, so they study and can kind of practice and kind of go along to script. That's what I really felt like at that time about liking boys and dating and all those kinds of things. And the flip side is that there was this big divide that was happening with my friends where they were really into boys. And of course, 14, 15, your hormones are going crazy and you're trying to figure this all out. And they were really excited about this journey. And I wasn't. I mean, I had my own thoughts about who was to be my boo in my head? Alyssa Milano. I don't know where my tastes was, but Alyssa Milano from Who's the Boss was like my chick. That's who I had the hugest crush on. And so I got busy. I started getting, and because I was so different from my friends, the distance was palpable for me. So I couldn't have lunch with them. I didn't feel like I related to them anymore. I didn't feel part of the cool crowd anymore. So I needed something to do to fill up my lunch times because hanging out, talking about boys and who was cute just wasn't it for me. And I felt different, and I feel like they thought I was different too. So I needed to get busy. So what did I do? I joined every club that met at lunchtime. So whether it was newspaper, whether it was, I don't know, I was in all kinds of lunchtime clubs. I also was in student government. And so I found myself getting really, really busy so I can fill up my time. And the wink in all of that was that's how I developed my leadership skills. That's where I really learned about feminism as well too, because I can't remember what the name of that particular club was, but I was a founding member of my school's Gay Straight Alliance. Even though I was not even out or even out to myself, I kind of was doing this to be, political or intersectional or whatever it was. And again, it's always looking in retrospect, like, oh, that really did serve a purpose. And part of that was me developing my skills and developing relationships with all kinds of people. I'm not going to go like year by year in my life because y'all, I'm about to be 39 and that'll be a whole long journey. Fast forward to say, though, how I got through the rest of my high school was that I remember when I finally got that answer from God. And it wasn't just a one-time answer, but it came to me. And it came to me in a knowing, like a deep in my spirit knowing, intuition. I can't even begin to explain it, nor do I even guess that it was the voice of God saying to me that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And who I am is not a mistake, and how I show up is intentional, and who I am is a gift to me, and that I'm not an abomination, and that I'm not. And also it prompted me to dig deeper and to read more about the history of the Bible and the history of certain chapters and verses, et cetera, et cetera. But I remember that's when I first understood knowing what God speaking to me feels like, and how do I know that? Fast forward, so that was a huge part of my life as well too, that continues to serve me, about knowing the difference between an external voice, or I shouldn't say external, but knowing when the spirit world is communicating with me versus when ego is communicating with me. A lot of times, and I actually dated this girl once, y'all. She was a whole hot mess, like pastor's daughter, the whole nine. And she was like, well, God didn't tell you that because God says. I'm like, how you gonna tell me, boo, what God said? Like, I don't even need to get into a whole whatever with you because I know what that voice sounds like inside of me, and I know what that is. And I also know then when fear is speaking to me, because those are two different types of feeling. Or even when ego means like, oh, this is no bad, it's gonna be okay, we should do this because it is really self-serving and it's the wrong choice, but we're trying to rationalize it in our head. That's when our ego is speaking. And I know what that is, and I know when that's very different than like that spiritual voice inside of me and that intuition. So, and that voice has come to me in a lot of different iterations over the years, and it comes to me most clearly in dreams. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've had a dream and it come to fruition exactly as is. And I'm also really blessed that at times I get visions, like seeing flash when I see a whole movie, so to speak, happen in my head, and I know that's God speaking to me. It happened to me when I had a premonition about my grandma passing away, which was, logically there's no reason why that should have happened or the timing, but I knew exactly how, when, down to the date, and it was crazy because that's the first time I was really aware that what was happening, and tried to tell people and they didn't believe me, and true enough, it happened the way I saw it happen. Same thing with both my grandparents. When they passed away, I saw their deaths before everyone else did. And so I say all of that to say that I realized that part of my journey had also been a gift to me, a gift to showing me about some of my other gifts and abilities that would later serve me in life. So went away to college and was involved in religious type organizations such as gospel choir, and still attended pretty traditional churches. But also around that time, I would say that I was on the fence about how I identified. Again, ritual was still really important to me, but I felt more and more disenchanted with the organization of religion, or the people in the community, the religious community. It did not speak to me for all kinds of reasons. And so I felt very much on this fence of wanting the ritual, wanting the presence, wanting to commune and talk about God, and wanting to be in that kind of space. But all of the otherness that went along with it did not serve me, and it didn't feel right. Am I back? I think I am back. Yes, I'm back. Um, I see it's choppy for a second, so let me give it a second to catch up. Yes. All right. After college, in my early 20s, I studied Buddhism. And that was another like monumental milestone for me for all kinds of reasons. And look, I'll show you guys something that most of y'all will never see because you don't always see the front of me. But I have, I don't know if you can see it. I have a lotus on my back. I'm not sure if you can see it, or you can see the top of it at least. And the lotus is a symbol of purity out of mud, because the lotus flower only grows out of mud and out of imperfection, and from imperfection comes perfection. And Buddhism spoke to me for a variety of reasons, but one particular thing that still stays with me is, and actually I wear lotuses, so something I should know, I wear lotuses, though I'm not, oh, here it is. Let me get it together. There she goes. Where's my camera? And I still wear a Buddha. And there's all kinds of Buddhist things in my home. Even though I'm not officially a Buddhist, a lot of it still speaks to me. One huge thing that really sits with me is that the Buddha always taught never to believe the Buddha. the Buddha always implored us to question and judge and evaluate everything for ourselves, which is something that's so different than other types of organized religion where you're supposed to blindly follow and blindly believe. And a lot of other things spoke to me about Buddhism, but really the whole idea about that it wasn't a deity-based religion, but really based on a way of life and a way of questioning the world and making sense of the world and serving the world, and about always looking for the lessons, and all of that really spoke to me about Buddhism. And so I'm not going to get into a whole conversation about what does Buddhism mean, but that has been an integral part of my journey, not only for the actual beliefs and tenets of Buddhism, but also because it was the very first time that I dared to say that I wasn't Christian anymore. And that was a very scary place to be. It was really scary to feel like I was renouncing God, even though I wasn't in my heart, but to dare to be was huge to me. It also coincided with when I finally finished reading the Bible, cover to cover on my own, and realized that what so many people are fighting for and dying for and arguing about, 90% of it is actually not even in the Bible. Like, really, it has been so manipulated, not the Bible itself, but the messages about the Bible have been so manipulated and so misunderstood that it was almost like this cosmic joke. I'm like, people are believing and fighting and arguing and dying and killing and all of this over what he say, she say, because they never actually read and studied themselves. And it just made me sick to my stomach, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And all of the things that, and there was just so much of it I just didn't believe. And again, not that egocentric belief about, oh, this doesn't serve me, or, oh, I don't like it, so therefore I'm going to, cherry pick, as some people say, but just that going back to that gut feeling and God speaking in me. I'm like, this is not true. I can't quite put my finger on what isn't and what's not, but I know in my heart of hearts, this isn't accurate. This isn't meant to be taken literally. This is meant to be a historical and cultural description of a particular faith in their journey, but this isn't supposed to be followed in a literal sense of do as this is, but instead this is the story of XYZ that may be divinely inspired, because who am I to say whether it is or it isn't, but it's not meant to be a blueprint for my life. And those two things happening in competition were extremely jarring. Hey, Denise, I'm not sure if you're still here, but I see that that you joined, and so thank you for listening to my journey, not my journal. And so those two things kind of coincided, where I knew I wasn't Christian in the organizational sense. Did I believe in Christ? Yes. Did I believe that Christ was a direct descendant from God? Yes. Did I believe in the resurrection? I don't know if that was important. I don't know if that was necessary for me to believe. And I know that I don't know, and I'm okay with that, because that doesn't negate from Christ's message and Christ being a master. Do I believe that Christ was the master? Didn't believe that. And so at the same time that was happening, with my learning and studying about Buddhism, and it really helped propel me into this place where, one, I knew that this traditional organization didn't work for me. But what was kind of jarring and difficult was that I didn't have a title. I didn't have a name of a religion that I belonged to. I didn't have that sense of belonging that I truly, truly wanted and needed. I didn't have a place where I can really talk about what I was thinking and feeling, because at that time, I was living in New York and New Jersey. And for those of you guys that may not have been there, like, people don't talk about religion. People don't talk about spirituality publicly. Like, it's considered impolite to talk about your beliefs or to talk about your religion, because that's just not what people do. So you might have a particular faith, or you might have a particular whatever, but you don't talk about it at work, or you don't talk about it with your friends per se. You talk about it exclusively within the confines of that religious organization. And so I felt very lost, in the sense that I didn't have my people in my tribe, and I didn't know where to find my people in my tribe. came back to Texas, moved back to New York. And when I moved back to New York the second time after my daughter was born, I started attending a church that felt a lot closer because, again, the nudge and the wink that this was all pointing to was that community was really important to me. So I knew that ritual was highly important to me. I knew that I had a direct relationship with God, or the God concept, or the divinity. I knew that that was also both external to me and internal. I knew that these different religions were cultural expressions of different groups of people trying to discover and access and experience God, but it wasn't meant to be a blueprint. So I knew those things through my journey, and what was still missing was that sense of community. So I started going to this church called Unity, which is probably the closest that I've been to finding my people. And so for those of you guys that may not know, Unity is born from the New Thought tradition, which is this idea that the Bible is a metaphysical, allegorical representation for how we are to be in the world and how we are to interact with each other. And we, at least in this particular church in New York, Unity of New York, we called Jesus our big brother, and he was a guide in that way. But it was very interfaith in the sense that you didn't have to be Christian to be part of Unity, and Unity was really about unity. And so I felt for the first time that I was around my people that kind of saw the Bible in the same way that I saw the Bible. There was really an expansive group of people that was open to not only just us experiencing God for ourselves and sharing God for ourselves, but also in communing with people and being good stewards and serving the community and sharing. And of course, it was inclusive. You could be your whole gay self. You could be polyamory, you can be from a Jewish background, you can be from a Buddhist background. Like, it was so inclusive, and I felt at home and I felt comfortable in that faith. Around that same time, I had that other gut feeling, and the gut feeling was that I was supposed to be a spiritual leader. And if Tori is watching this, or somebody tags her in this, what's funny is I kind of forgot about it until today when I was prepping for this conversation. So even though I don't have notes, I do mental prep in my head, and I actually don't write down a lot of notes when I'm getting ready to speak, because I don't want to be so stuck on the script that I lose the message. And I remember at this time that I felt it in my spirit. Again, it was that God speak in me, that I was supposed to be a spiritual leader. And I couldn't quite figure out how. Was I supposed to be a pastor? Was I supposed to be ordained in some kind of way? Was I supposed to, have my own church? I couldn't figure it out, and I kept trying to suppress that feeling. Like, truly, I did not want to think about it. And people talk about the call. I was feeling the call loud and clear, but I did not want to answer the call. My best friend and her wife tried to pull me into answering the call and they knew that was what was on my heart, because they are more than just friends. They are truly family to me. And that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But to help me answer the call, they asked me to be ordained to be able to officiate their wedding. And so I did, but that was kind of more of a paper thing and less about me showing up spiritually. But they were trying to like, Aaliyah, you have this calling on you, you need to follow it. And I still couldn't figure out what that calling was supposed to be. What I did know was that I was supposed to talk and to teach and to share. And so that's how I tried to that's how the ego tried to assuage the calling, because I was like, God, you must got this confused. I'm not supposed to be in anybody's church, especially with all the things that I believe and think about church. That's not supposed to be me. So I'm just going to have this blog where I'm going to talk about spiritual stuff. I'm going to talk about relationship stuff. And, I'm going to be on Twitter talking about God stuff. But that must be what you mean, right? I tried, y'all. I really tried. I tried to bargain and rationalize with God, and God was like, "No, boo, that's not it." But I tried. You guys got to give me credit. If you know anything about me, or if you know anything about Virgos, we are stubborn, and we will try to be right, even when we're wrong. We're gonna be wrong boldly, loudly, and consistently, because we are going to be we're going to stand by what we say to be true, even when we know we did that's wrong. I was talking to someone recently, and she was like, "Well, when you're wrong, do you admit it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll admit it when I'm wrong, but up until that moment, I'm gonna ride that wrongness out." Okay, so that's what I was doing, and I was doing that for a lot of years of not wanting to show up spiritually, show up as a spiritual leader for all kinds of reasons. Who do I think I am? What faith am I going to show up as a pastor or leader of? Who's going to listen to me? What do I know? I don't even know what kind of spills out of my gut. But what's my calling? What does all of this mean? What's my message? I don't know. At least I pretended that I didn't know. My story's almost coming to an end, I promise y'all. After my divorce, moved back to Texas and tried to rejoin the New Thought community, and it didn't quite feel right. I went to a few different churches, and it just wasn't a good fit for me. Nothing against those churches at all. It just didn't mesh right in my soul. I was dating someone who was traditionally Christian, and so I thought, well, maybe I just need to try again. Yeah, I tried it, y'all. I tried it. I really did. Like, for real, for real. I went to church every Sunday. And for those of y'all that are been my Facebook friends for a while, it always kind of makes me smile when my On This Day comes up on Facebook, because it shows me I was posting away about church, and none of those things were inauthentic. What I valued about that particular church that I went to was that I felt like it was more life lessons. I felt like it was very TED Talk. I felt like I could learn and glean a lot, and I was very moved by two things. One, that the pastor definitely knew the Bible, or knew the Bible historically. It can actually teach, and versus cherry picking, or what do we call it? There's a word. I'm gonna think of the word in a second. I think it's called proof texting. I think that's the phrase. And proof texting is when somebody says, God told us to X, Y, Z. How do we know? Because the Bible says it. Because the Bible says in this piece of a verse here, in this piece of a verse here, this piece of a verse here, and this piece of a verse. So when you string those all together, that's what God said. Proof texting, like trying to prove it by just pulling pieces of text and stringing them together to create a meaning that was totally not in the Bible. One, two, intended to be used in that kind of purpose, or three, even y'all have been to too many churches. Y'all know about proof texting. I think it's like horrible, and it's such manipulation. But that's a whole nother video for another day. And so I appreciated that this particular pastor did not proof text. And I also appreciated that the pastor had enough humanity to not ever say who was better than. And so even though he never was in support of being gay or gay marriage at all, it was never even something that we danced around. We just didn't even talk about it because of the whole idea about why be divisive. Now, that was what I appreciated about it, but it still wasn't enough for me. And it wasn't enough for me not only spiritually, but it wasn't enough for me politically or socially, because I never want my child to be in a place where she couldn't be open and honest about who her family is. And even though I felt like we wouldn't be stoned or thrown out of the church or anything like that, just because they were never like that. They were never nasty, super embracing, loving, just community oriented people. And I felt welcome every single time. I always asked myself, even though I'm paying my tithes, if I were to be married, could I be married in this church? Could my child be baptized in this church? And if I were to die tomorrow, would this pastor preside over my funeral? And the answer to all of those were no. And so I had to really own that and sit with that. At the same time, own and sit that a big piece of my motivation for going to this church, again, was trying to have community. And then also because it was with the person who I was seeing at the time, what was important to her. So I wanted to try. I wanted to try really hard to be, to fit in the box. What actually ended up, I haven't really spoken about this at all, but what actually, a huge part about what broke us up, and I would say 50% was this and 50% were my own internal issues I was going on about my former marriage. But the fundamental thing that broke us up was that I could not fit in this Christian box for her. Um, I wasn't it, and I wasn't going to be it, and I wasn't going to raise my child to be this, nor was I wanting to have a family at some point that would be this. And so that ultimately meant that we couldn't function anymore in the unit that she wanted us to be, because I wasn't going to be those things ever. And I had to really own for myself, like, yeah, I tried for a year or whatever, but that's not who I am. So what does that lead to me now? Who am I now? And that's been something I've kind of been sitting with over the last 3 years, but has been really accelerated in me now, and part of my coming out journey. So if you've seen some of my posts over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to talk about that. And who am I now is a woman that knows that God is in me and God is beyond me, a woman that knows that I'm a co-creator with God, and that I am ordained divinely with gifts that I'm supposed to show up and serve in the world. Part of those gifts means helping other women come to their place of liberation and knowing and trusting their own internal voices. And not only their own internal voices for how they are to navigate in this world, but also how they're supposed to show up and rise up and help to liberate their other sisters. Who I am in this world, and that's a spiritual journey that I'm meant to share and I'm meant to lead. And to know that and embrace that is scary as hell. It's scary as fuck, y'all. Like, for real, it's really just like, I can lose my mind over this. And I'm kind of like forcing myself to breathe right now, because it's such a huge calling that's been put on my life and put on my heart. And I think that's why I'm kind of stalling around talking about it, because I'm still just like, but what I do know is that I'm ready to answer the call. I'm ready to show up as the spiritual person that I am, and share the lessons and share the tips and the tools and the resources that I have to help other women change their world and change our world by being the goddesses that we are. So that's my whole 46 minutes and 37 seconds of my religious journey and the themes that have come up for me. And what I realize about this journey is that none of it's been in vain, that all of it has been pointing to who I am as a leader, as a woman, as a spiritual being, as a gifted person, as a community organizer, as a person that needs ritual, and all of those things. Tasha asked me, was I ever sad, angry, grieved by the loss of what you hope Christianity would be? Absolutely. Absolutely. I was, when I think less about my own grief and sadness about myself, because I would think a huge beginning part, I would say up until I was 22-ish, the grief was all about, and the anger and the sadness was about me, about why couldn't I fit in. It was never about questioning Christianity. It was all about why couldn't I be a good Christian. Then when I was around 23, 24, 25, I was really angry. I was really angry at church, and I was really angry at God. I felt really let down. I felt pissed off. Like, when I was talking about going through my Buddhism phase, it wasn't this whole like gentle, oh yes, I'm releasing Christianity. I was pissed off. I was so angry at people and their manipulation. I was really angry at the organization of Christianity. I was angry at the lies that so many people espoused in the name of Christianity. And by proxy, I was mad at God. I'm not going to lie. I was really mad at God. I felt like I had done all the right things, so to speak, and I still didn't have my place. I didn't have my footing. I didn't have what I needed from the church. And I didn't want anything to do. I don't think I was able to articulate then that I was mad at God, but I knew I was mad at God because you just actually made me remember. I'm like, how did I know I was angry? I knew I was mad at God because I stopped intentionally doing things that are important to me. I no longer observed Lent. And for me, Lent was such an integral ritual for me. Like, regardless if I was part of a church community or not, participating in Jesus' sacrifice for 40 days was such a huge part of what I was. I always observed, always actually really stuck. Like, everything I gave up for Lent, I was also really good about sticking to, because I believed in that level of sacrifice and communion. I always participated in fasting during Holy Week. And I remember intentionally not doing it, kind of like a big F you. Like, that's what I was thinking at the time. And I remember that was around when I started becoming really involved in different online platforms. And if anybody dared said anything religious, I was there to read you, not read you for filth, but read you for filth. Like, I was going chapter, book, verse you, tell you why you wrong, why your mama and them wrong, and what all of that was really speaking to. And I remember my aunt at the time, who's very religious, who's very much into church, who also saw a calling on me that I didn't see when I was a teenager. She kept saying, "You just church hurt." And I was like, "No, I'm not church hurt." Like, I hated when she would say that to me, because I felt like she was trivializing what I was, and kind of like, "Oh, you don't mean what you're thinking, you're just church hurt." What I realized what she was saying was, in a way, that she recognized that I was grieving, and she also saw a calling on me. And yeah, so I was really rebellious and angry for a really long time. I'm trying to think about, when did I stop being angry? Because I lasted for, so when I was 25, I'm trying to think about, when did I go back to a religious organization? Probably, in all honesty, not until, so my daughter, I'm sorry, I got to do a little bit of math. I was 25 in 2003. My daughter was born when I was 31. And I started going back to church at 33, 34. So a good 9 years. Yeah, I truly was. And I think kind of what helped me to not be so much was actually moving back to Texas the first time. When I moved back to Dallas, and when I moved to Dallas in 2007, people here in Dallas are super religious. So I thought. And I remember one year when I was working at a school that was a predominantly Black school and very religious. Like, we didn't say it was a prayer minute, but it was very understood that it was a moment of prayer. And we had a pass, what do you call those things? A prayer request box at the front desk. I don't know if I replaced my anger. I'm gonna talk about it in a second. And I remember going into the school being very judgmental, like, "Oh, here we go again, these Christian people, blah, 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 blah." And hey, Erica, you can come back and watch, girl. It's a whole 51 minutes of it now. I remember going into that place and already knowing I was going to be judged. Knowing I was going to be judged, because when somebody would say, "Oh, you're a Christian," I would say, "No." They would say, "Oh, what church do you go to?" I'm like, "I don't go to church." "Oh, are you?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a Christian." And they was like, "Oh, so you're an atheist?" I'm like, "No, I'm not an atheist. I'm just not a Christian. I don't go to church. I don't belong to all of that." I assumed that they were going to have a lot of judgment about me. What they did have was curiosity. And what I continued to experience that year was people really showing up for me in ways that they did not have to. My wife at the time was pregnant. I clearly was not pregnant, and I had a daughter on the way. And so people embraced, my school family embraced me getting ready to become a mom, even though I wasn't pregnant or in a relationship that was traditional. They loved me through it, which was shocking because I wasn't expecting this. So much so that they threw me a surprise baby shower. And I remember just being so just like, "Y'all would do this for me? Like, I don't fit in the box." And they were like, who I am on paper and who I am as a person were two different things to them. And they embraced me, even though that was huge. I remember some of the parents at my school, even though I wasn't out to the children, I was definitely out to the staff. When I brought my daughter to work after she was born, they were like, "Oh, give me the baby." I remember getting gifts from some of the parents. And this was before FMLA covered gay couples. So this is, back in 2009, and I didn't get family leave when my daughter was born. And so I had to use up all the little bit of vacation time I had, which is only 2 weeks at that time. And my boss was like, oh yeah, put in for your time off. We're just not going to submit that paperwork. We're just going to, they worked with me and refused to and figured out ways to go around the system because the system clearly didn't support gay families. And that showed me that these people can be traditionally Christian and still love and embrace me, and that maybe I was the one. I think that was the moment when I realized that I was the one that was also bringing my assumptions to the table as much as probably some of them are bringing their assumptions to the table. And I realized that I was really projecting my own. That's when I realized I was angry. And that's when I also realized that I was ready to not be angry anymore. The eyes were an accident. Oh, the eyes, the emoji eyes. Um, and I was really thankful for that experience to be able to see people's humanity and not their religious box. And I was really thankful that they were able to see mine as well. You guys are asking some good questions. Oh, thank you for the hearts and the little check box. I'm gonna take a sip and see what else y'all got for me. Well, if there's nothing else that you guys want to know or whatever, so two things to know. If you're watching this on the replay, and it's been long, I'm long-winded. It was a lot. I actually tried to condense down a lot of it. Feel free to ask questions, comment away on it, even if you're watching this on the replay, and I will always come back and comment and respond as well. And then two, if you're not part of my community, I actually invite you to be there. So look, I'm since I'm doing it on my desktop, I can type in my own links. I'm so excited. I'm used to doing, I hope this works. I'm used to doing my lives from my phone where I'm like, I'll come back later and type in a link. I'm like, ooh, I can type it in now. So I invite you to my community, my soul tribe. And in that soul tribe, we're going to be doing some awesome things. You get daily inspiration from me, different things to help you think. And as I am kind of reframing my content and showing up as a person and showing up in my calling, then you guys are going to get a lot of the goodies there. So that's it for me. Oh, hey, Tina. Tina, I'm just getting ready to log off, but I'm going to stay on for a few minutes for you. In case you have any questions that unfortunately, oh, and also Erica, you just jumped on at the end too. So anything y'all want to know, I'm pretty much an open book. So I'm happy to answer. I'm going to stay on for a little bit, and I look forward to seeing you over at the Soul Tribe if you are not there yet. Hey, Tina. What else can I talk about? So, oh, here's one of the little tidbit, one kind of interesting fact, is that even though I don't ascribe to a particular religion anymore, I definitely ascribe to universal truths. And universal truths are, to me, those things that kind of permeate many religions that are, it's kind of the thread that you see throughout because as you heard me say, I believe that religion is our cultural expression and our cultural story about how we experience God and how we pass it down through those cultural and ethnic traditions. So because I believe in universal truths, I now don't have as much of a problem anymore with participating in different religious experiences. And I sent my daughter to a Jewish camp. Why? Because it's a great camp, and they call the camp a Jewish camp for kids, not a camp for Jewish kids. So they're very open and embracing of all different faiths and beliefs and families. And also, I do believe in some of the fundamentals or some of the foundations that that she experiences through her camp experience. So I don't feel conflicted at all about not only sending her to a Jewish camp, but also being having a paid membership with the Jewish Community Center, even though I'm not Jewish and I don't pretend to be. One day we probably will celebrate Hanukkah in our home because my daughter is like, so what's up with this? Why don't we get to celebrate Hanukkah? She's looking forward to when she turns 13 and she gets to go to Israel with her camp. Like, this is becoming a part of her traditions and experiences. And so, oh, thank you, Tina. And so I'm curious about what her specific experience of God is going to be when we get older. We do have certain things in our family that we do. We still say our prayers. We still say grace. We still have blessings. But she also knows about, about the Orishas, and she knows about Oya, and she knows about Yeshun, and she knows about Yemeya. So those are things that are also important in our family as well, too. Um, she finds the Black church experience interesting because that's not how she grew up. So I remember when we was going to this particular church, and she's like, and she never wanted to go to kids' church, surprisingly enough. She really wanted to be in adult church, and she was like, but why is he hollering? Well, what does that mean? So I'm curious to see this journey open up for her as well, too. So that's kind of a little bit about my quirky family and my beliefs. What you guys don't know is I wear my crystals. I was joking in another group that I'm in right now is that thanks to kind of the journey I'm on right now, when I take off my clothes at night, I'm like, I have all these crystals falling out my bra. Again, more conversation for another time, but I'm like, ooh, I have different crystals that mean different things. So I'm into all of that kind of stuff. And with that being said, it's 11 o'clock almost here, and two things have to happen. I must finish making my child's lunch for tonight. I have to do my moon ritual because I totally missed it last night. So I can't wait to see your questions and thoughts on the replay. I cannot wait to see you guys over in the Soul Tribe and get ready for this journey because it's about to be on. Thank you. Love you guys.